Good evening and welcome to On the Waterfront. I'm your host, Melinda Moulton. And tonight I have with me Jill Krowinski. How are you?
I'm well. Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
See you, my old dear friend, which we'll get into that in a minute. But let me tell you a little bit about Jill Krowinski. Jill is the House Majority Leader and the Executive Director of Emerge Vermont, an organization that trains Democratic women to run for office. Since 2012, Jill has been representing the Old North End in downtown Burlington in the Vermont House. She worked for Planned Parenthood of Northern New England in numerous roles, the last as Vice President of Education and Vermont Community Affairs. Jill has extensive campaign experience in Vermont on local, statewide, and congressional races. Wow. Well, I remember meeting you maybe 9 years ago.
Yeah.
When I went on the board of Planned Parenthood, and we've worked together pretty closely all those years. And then you went into the State House and got elected, and now you're House Majority Leader.
That's right.
Your rise to the top. Well, thank you for all you do for our state. So what I'd like to share with our viewers is what drives you, and tell us a little bit about your past, where you come from, what brought you here, and maybe a little bit about someone who was inspirational to have you move into such a selfless and really the service industry, because you have really been serving your community most of your professional life, if not all of it.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about your past and your history.
Wow. Well, where do I start?
Start at the beginning. We have a half an hour.
So I am originally from Western New York. My dad is a Vietnam veteran, and we lived in a middle class life outside of Buffalo. And after graduating from high school, I went to the University of Pittsburgh, where I majored in urban studies and political science. And I thought I was on my way to go to grad school for urban planning, and I never had seen myself in politics. I really saw myself as working for town and county governments. And I had this space of time between graduation and going to grad school, and a friend of mine said, "You really need to try out working on a campaign. You'd love it." And I said, "No way."
On a political campaign?
On a political campaign.
Wow.
And this was in 2002. And so after several conversations, I ended up with this organization called 21st Century Democrats. And this organization was sort of like the Democratic version of AmeriCorps, where this organization trained students how to run grassroots campaigns. And they said, you have a couple options of where you can go after you graduate from this training program, and here's the list. And I saw Vermont on that list. And it all kind of came flooding back of the memories and watching the news around civil unions and the debate. The fact that there were people in the legislature who knew that if they voted their conscience and voted in support of that bill, that they would lose their race. And this was the election after that to try to win back the House. And I thought, that is a place. I love that. Those are my values and those are my people. And so I want to go there and try to help them with this fight. And when I moved to Vermont, I was living in Springfield. So I went from Pittsburgh to Springfield,
Wow.
which was quite a change. But I just completely fell in love, and I didn't go back. I made Vermont my home. And
did you work on the House campaigns?
I did, and we didn't win we came close, but we didn't win the House back in 2002. But we did in 2004. I had the opportunity to work with Gay Symington, who is a mentor and a role model to me. And to be with her during that moment was pretty incredible. And her work ethic is amazing. And so I had the opportunity after that election to work with her when she became Speaker of the House. The first Democratic woman to serve as Speaker, the second in history. Which is pretty remarkable.
It's remarkable.
And I was with her for two years, and then I went on to work on Peter Welch's first congressional race, which was also pretty incredible. You'll remember that with Martha Rainville.
Yes.
And so I was just really enjoying the work and loving working with people who cared so much about service. And that led me to working at the Vermont Democratic Party and running Gay's campaign for governor. And after that, I thought, you know what? it's time to go and work on some issues that I really care about. And Planned Parenthood was near and dear to my heart. And so that's where we met.
That's
and
where
I
we
had
met.
the opportunity to work there for almost
Years, 8 years.
8 years. Wow. Yeah. And, you know, I'll tell you, one of the most important moments that I had working at Planned Parenthood was really connected back to my experience in college. I remember the first time I walked into a Planned Parenthood and I was met with protesters and an armed guard had to let me in. And that was the first time I ever experienced anything like that. And it really shook me and made me realize the privilege that I have had up until that point. And this was just for healthcare, my right to access healthcare. And I remember leaving the health center that day thinking, I will do whatever I can to make sure that no woman ever has to do and go through that, right? And so when we were at Planned Parenthood together, we worked on creating a buffer zone in Burlington, because you'll remember that there were women, patients being harassed as they were walking into the health center, being photographed, repeatedly harassed as they walked in. And it was just a moment for me to be able to help support and advocate and organize our patients and our volunteers to work with the Burlington City Council to pass that. And we were able to pass it. And then the Supreme Court ruled against buffer zones. And so we went back and passed something else that would still protect patients walking into the health center and also met free speech guidelines, in which we heard from the Supreme Court. But it's moments like that for me that just it really inspires me and moves me to keep on doing this work to help people who may not have a voice or need help having their voice be heard. And so that's what really motivates me.
So, do you remember the bus when we tried to get the ads on the bus to advertise Planned
Yes,
Parenthood's
I do.
health services? And we kind of got some pushback on that.
We did.
We did, but we got through it.
That's right.
And the bus company was kind enough to put up our ads advertising our health care that we were providing. So, who in your life was inspirational for you? Who was the person who guided you to understand public service and why you went into such selfless service?
You know, I think that it was so many different people growing up and seeing mentors in college and coming to Vermont. Growing up, my best friend's mom did, every time I saw her, she was baking cookies for someone who had a sick parent or relative. She was a tutor. She was every day she was doing something that was selfless and giving back to her community. And that stayed with me. Meeting Gay Symington and being able to work with her and advocate for her values was inspiring. And Madeline Kunin, you know, has been amazing in pushing me to think outside of my comfort zone about what to do with my career and options for service. I was with her the day that we created Emerge Vermont. She had been in California speaking at an Emerge event, and she came back saying, "This is amazing. There's this organization in California, and all they do is recruit and train women and give them the skills to run and win." And she rightly so has been very frustrated. She said, "I was the first woman to serve as governor, and I don't want to be the last." And so we said, let's do this. So we came together. Keisha Rum and Sarah Buxton were also part of that.
So we have a phone call. Let me see who's here on the phone. Hi, good evening, and who are we speaking with? Hi. Hello?
Hold on.
Nobody? Okay. All right. Go ahead. Continue.
So that was 6 years ago. We created Emerge, and then I've been involved with the organization ever since. And in February, I became the new executive director.
That's so exciting.
Yeah. So
So Emerge is a national organization.
So it's like Planned Parenthood. There's a national organization, and there are state affiliates. So we are the Vermont affiliate, and then there is an Emerge America that does the high-level work across the country.
So how many Emerges are there?
That's a good question. I think there's around 20 and growing across the country.
That's fabulous.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about the work that Emerge does. Educate our viewers about what is Emerge and what does it do?
So Emerge is an organization that provides training for women who want to run for office or they want to work on campaigns. I think that there are differences between men and women when it comes to serving and making decisions about whether and when to serve. And our organization works closely with women to help them realize that they do have the skills and they do have an important story to tell. And so we train them, and we have different programs. We have our signature training program that runs the course over 6 months and is 70 hours long. We have our boot camp series. We have a boot camp that trains women who want to run for office over a weekend. And we have a boot camp to train women how to staff and run campaigns, because it's really important that women are at the table making decisions at Montpelier, but the decisions at the campaign office also need to have women at them.
So for my viewers out there, your website is?
EmergeVT.org.
EmergeVT.org. So I encourage all of you to go on the website. And so for our viewers out there who would want to be involved and get involved in Emerge, what's the process?
So I would say get on our mailing list and look out for ways that we'll announce upcoming boot camps in the signature training program. We've also started to, we've always provided workshops. We're looking at doing some new workshops next year. We have a lot of interest from high school students who want to get involved. And so this last weekend we had our training, a boot camp to train campaign staff. And we had a student there who said, there are so many women at my school who would love to do this program, and can you come to my school and do this? So we recognize there is a big need out there, and we want to meet it. So I'm looking forward to putting together our final schedule for next year to provide all of these trainings and some new workshops.
So tell me about the age group that you have in your, how large is your class? Is this year's class?
So our signature training class is 19 women from all across the state. They range in age from 21 years old to 71 years old. We have 4 women of color in our class. We really are striving to ensure that we are as inclusive as possible and have as little barrier to do the program.
So what is the cost? Is there a cost to this program?
There is a tuition fee of $800 that you can fundraise for or get tuition to cover, or you could pay yourself.
And there's an application you fill out. Do you apply to be? So you apply.
Yep, so we'll announce in June that applications are open. And we have a whole process of application, interviews, and then acceptance into the program. So we're just so thrilled with this class.
That's so exciting.
Mm-hmm.
So talk to me about some of the women who have gone through the class and who are now serving.
Well, we have some really incredible Emerge alumna. Senator Becca Ballant, who is the Senate Majority Leader, is an alum. And State Reps Emily Kornheiser, Carol Odie, Mary Beth Redmond. I mean, we have a huge list of really incredible women who have gone through the program and are serving.
And were elected.
And we're elected.
And are now serving.
Yep, Representative Carrie Dolan. I could go on and on. So we're thrilled. And we continue to support women after they become elected and finding ways to have our sisterhood come together to have their back when they need us.
And they have to be reelected.
That's right.
So when they have to run again.
So Emerge does not endorse candidate. We just continue to provide and train and give support. Yep.
So why should someone, a young person or not a young person, in our who's viewing us tonight, why would you inspire them to get involved in public service and to serve in the legislature? And explain to my viewers what the constraints are to be in the legislature.
Sure.
Like you have a job. But when you're in the legislature, it's January through
about end of April, early May.
And it's 4 days a week.
Yep.
And so
Tuesday
for people
through
who
Friday.
have jobs, how do they work that out? How does that work?
Well, I think it's incredibly important, especially for young people in Vermont, to run and serve. And it does have its challenges. Trying to juggle family life and work life with serving can be very challenging. I'm really proud under my leadership to have helped support and recruit more young families to have run and win their campaigns last November and increase the number of people serving who have young kids, because that voice at the table is incredibly important when we're talking about issues like childcare and paid family and medical leave. Their voice makes a difference in shaping that.
All retirees.
The more diverse the group, the better legislation that will happen.
And legislators are paid.
Yes.
They're not paid a lot. And I've heard that all they have to read and everything they have to do it really is like a full-time job. But you are paid. Is it like $12,000 a year or something that?
Yep. So there's a stipend that you get, and then you get reimbursed and per diems for food and travel and lodging. But I will say we've worked really hard to make sure that we can support our young families who are serving. One of my favorite stories from when Gay was Speaker was that, the State House wasn't really friendly towards children not that long ago. And when she was Speaker, she set out a box of toys under her, in her office, in case someone who had children needed to bring them to the State House because they were sick or something was going on and they had a child care emergency. And that really set a tone. And that was really important. And I think Shap Smith, who became Speaker after Gay Symington, really kept with that theme. And one of my favorite moments on the floor with Shap was when his daughter Mia was there, and she wasn't feeling well, and he was at the podium presiding, and she just walked up to him and stood in front of him. And they just stood there together while he continued to preside because she wanted to be with their dad. And it was just such a special moment to see a speaker and his child at that podium together. And that became okay and normal, and that's how it should be. And Mitzi has carried on, Mitzi Johnson, the current speaker, with that tradition of having toys available in a spot for families if
children.
they need it, which is really, really important.
Outstanding.
But as we talk to different people about running for office, I have to say that there's been a shift given what's been happening in Washington and people's, anxiety and the sense of urgency that it's time to lead. And I have to share the story with you because it's so powerful. I was talking to a woman who was thinking about running for office and doing the Emerge program. And she cares deeply about gun violence reform. She reached out to her state representative, who's a Republican, and said, I hope that you'll support the gun safety waiting period bill. And he said, I can't support that. She asked why. He said, well, there's not enough data out there. And to this woman, data was lives, right? How many lives? Right, needed to leave us to prove it. And then a month later, he went on to introduce an amendment on the House floor on the reproductive rights bill to require women to have a waiting period to receive abortion care. And that was so incredibly frustrating to her. And she said, there hasn't been a choice for voters on the ballot. And when I look at the ballot, there's only been one choice. And why not me? Why can't my name be on the ballot? And it's conversations like that where we're sitting down and we're talking about, why not you? You can do this and you're qualified to do it. And that's what really drives me, is being able to support women through Emerge and having these conversations, and as House Majority Leader to say, you are qualified and you can do this, and let's work together to help you.
So so how many women are there in the legislature now? It's probably one of the largest.
So
ever.
In the country, I think we are ranked number 4 with about 39% of the legislature being women.
Going up?
Yep, and in the House, our Democratic caucus is divided. I think it's 50-50. I think we have one more woman and one more.
Do you give credit for that to Emerge? Do you think it's
I think Emerge has made a difference in growing the bench. I think that having women in leadership roles and looking for blind spots when it comes to recruiting and supporting women makes a difference. I think that, God bless her, Madeline Kunin has been working so hard on supporting women all across the state running for office.
For years.
Decades.
Decades, for years, for decades, for almost a century.
Yeah.
For a very, very long time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Well, her win was extraordinary. And she's the only female governor. We've never had a female mayor. Did you ever have women who come to you who want to run for mayor of Burlington? Or, I mean, there's never been a female mayor of Burlington. I find that really outrageous.
Let's look at the stats. We've never sent a woman to Congress. We've only had one woman serve as governor in our entire history. Out of our 6 statewide office holders, we only have one woman, which is Beth Pierce. We've never had a woman serve as Attorney General. And you're right, in Burlington, we've never had a woman serve as mayor. And I think supporting women, it's really about building the bench, right? So I have women who are interested in running for city council, and I know that once they get in there and start, then they will build up. So that's our mission, Melinda.
So what is your budget? What's your annual budget?
It's about $90,000 to $100,000.
That's nothing.
You know what though?
So where does the money come from? Does it come mostly from the tuition, or do you take donations?
Yep. So we fundraise. We're a 527. So
let me tell my viewers out there, if you have any interest in supporting Emerge, you can go to their website, which is emergevt.org. And I'm pretty sure that you have a donate button.
That's right.
So if you want to support this organization and help them to recruit women to run for public office, I suggest no donation is too small. So please go ahead and go to emergevt.org and make a contribution. Or if you're interested in running for public office, there is the application period. Sign up with your email. You get the newsletter. They'll let you know when you can submit an application and get involved in serving your community. Now, I want to talk to you as the House Majority Leader down in the in Montpelier about what keeps you up at night. What are some of the issues in Vermont that really worry you?
Wow, that is a big question.
Well, it is, and we have 10 minutes left on my show, so
let's
go at it.
There are many things that keep me up at night. I will say that when it comes to access to paid family and medical leave, I can't tell you how many of my friends had to go back to work early after having a baby, and how hard that was, and not having that time that they needed to really be able to bond with their new baby. The stress of that, the stress of finding infant care, because infant care is really hard to find in this state.
But we passed did we pass the paid leave?
We passed it last year.
Yeah.
He vetoed it. And so
who's he?
Governor Phil Scott vetoed it.
Phil Scott vetoed it.
So in January, we'll be
It's going to come up again.
It's going to come up again, and we're going to send him another version of the bill. But and it's also about taking care of
the elderly, or if you have a child who has a disability.
So I was
Right.
talking with someone who was telling me that she's had to make a hard decision about whether she's already used up all of her sick days at work, all of her time off, and her mom is still struggling with ALS. And so she has to make the decision about whether to take time off to take care of her mom.
Unpaid.
And having to not be able to cover her school college bills.
And in Europe, they have very, very high standards on paid leave.
That's right.
I mean, some paid leave programs are 18 months after you have a baby, and then paternity. So it's time. And what do you think is holding? I mean, what is holding this up? What's the worry about it? Is the burden on businesses to?
So the two themes I hear is that it should, the question of whether it should be voluntary or mandatory.
But voluntary for businesses to give paid leave.
Right.
Businesses.
Right.
So whether we give paid leave
So
or we
if
decide
it's-
not to. So you choose to do it.
Right.
Well,
So
a lot of businesses won't choose to do it.
Right. So the current version of the bill has an all-in approach when it comes to paid family leave. And then it has an all-in approach when it comes to taking care of a sick relative. And then when it comes to an individual temporary disability insurance, it's a voluntary program. And I think that is that is a step
It's
to
a
say
step.
we are compromising, and we are willing to compromise so that families don't have to wait any more or any longer to have access to this really critical program that helps families.
Because a lot of times that puts, I mean, it puts a lot of pressure when, I mean, it's sort of like sick days. We wanted to have, we wanted 7 days. I think we got 3, or
And then it went up.
and then it went up. But it was a step process. I'll never
That's
forget
right.
being in the State House when 300 people came in
Yeah.
and talked about what it meant that they couldn't stay home with their children, had to send their children to school with the flu, because if they didn't go to work, they would lose their jobs.
That's right. It's
I mean,
heartbreaking.
in this country, it's insane to think that and Vermont could be a leader, could really lead the way in this movement. So do you think, because we have a very good legislature that cares deeply about this, and so what are some of the other issues? So paid leave,
So, healthcare.
healthcare, okay.
The cost of healthcare and access to healthcare is a huge problem. There's no question about it. In fact, where we are with healthcare is extremely frustrating because we don't have a partner in Washington. In fact, in Washington, the Trump administration is rolling back and trying to strip back every possible part of the Affordable Care Act. And so much of our healthcare agenda has been about codifying and protecting those provisions in Vermont, because the Affordable Care Act has done great things for healthcare. And so we are wrestling with that with the federal government, and that's going to continue to be a fight. We've made great progress on supporting and expanding access to opioid treatment and mental health, but we haven't been able to really crack how we can create a comprehensive plan to make it more affordable for Vermonters. And then the last thing that keeps me up is climate change.
Climate change.
When I think
What do you think about this storm in the middle of November, huh? I mean, no, climate change. So what's happening in the legislature around that? Renewables and
yeah, there's going to be a package of
tax?
legislation that that's going to be introduced that I think builds really well on the work that we've been doing to combat climate change in our state, increasing access to electric vehicles, weatherization, that's public health, that's workforce development, that's lowering our carbon emissions. We are going to be looking at some broader reforms. One example is the TCI, Transportation Climate Initiative. The governor has showed some interest in that. I hope he will continue to. That really provides a regional approach through transportation to tackle climate change. I know we'll be having serious, robust conversations about some other policies to help us meet some of our goals on emissions in Vermont. And I think we still need to continue our work when it comes to workforce development and climate change together, building resiliency, looking at weatherization.
what about subsidies for people? Because I know when we got our solar panels, we got fabulous subsidies, and I think they've cut back a bit on the subsidy program and for renewables.
Some of those still exist. I think it just depends on the
on what they're
program
doing,
and what you're doing. I know that there's some really great rebates out there, even through Burlington Electric.
Yes,
I
Burlington
really
Electric is amazing.
would
one of a
recommend.
kind, but that's Burlington.
Right.
But around the state, it's really hard for people to go to.
And that is why weatherization is
so important,
because our housing stock is very old and it's expensive. And so that is one tool that we can use to help it. So look for a comprehensive plan package.
Carbon tax, do you think that'll ever happen?
I think we need to focus on what we can get the governor to join us
support,
on,
right.
because we don't have, as Democrats, the votes to override him. We have to build a coalition. So everything is about coming together to find a compromise.
Well, good for you.
Thank you.
That's important. That's important. So when are you running for governor? All right, I'm putting you on the spot here. Well, Jill Krowinski, I have loved knowing you all these years, and I am just so proud of you and the trajectory that your career has gone. You're doing extraordinary work down there in Montpelier and for our state of Vermont. And for all of us out there, I suggest you go to emergevt.org and get to know this wonderful organization that Jill is running, and run for public office. It makes a difference. And to all of you, happy Thanksgiving, and I'll see you next month. Thank you, Jill, for being here.
Thank you so much
Yep,
for
thank
having
you.
me, Melinda.
Good night.